You learned early that needing too much was risky, that asking for comfort could change the mood in a room, that wanting attention, reassurance, or help might quietly cost you safety, connection, or approval. So you adapted. You became smaller with your needs, quieter with your wants, and over time, hiding them stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like who you are. Welcome to Psychefold. Some people don't remember a single moment when they decided to hide their needs. It wasn't a clear decision. It was a pattern that formed slowly, shaped by what was available and what wasn't. Maybe emotional responses were inconsistent. Maybe caretakers were overwhelmed, dismissive, or unpredictable. Maybe love felt conditional, or attention had to be earned. So your nervous system learned a simple rule: it's safer not to ask. One of the first traits that often develops is hyper-independence. On the surface, it looks like strength. You handle things on your own. You don't lean too hard on anyone. You pride yourself on being capable, self-sufficient, and low maintenance. But underneath that independence is often a quiet belief that relying on others is unreliable or dangerous. Not because you don't value connection, but because your early experiences taught you that connection could disappear when you needed it most. So independence became a form of protection, not empowerment. It kept disappointment at a distance. Another common pattern is emotional self-editing. You instinctively scan your inner world before sharing it. You ask yourself if what you're feeling is reasonable enough, justified enough, calm enough. If it isn't, you keep it inside. You learned to present a filtered version of yourself that wouldn't overwhelm others. This isn't dishonesty, it's attunement taken too far. At some point, you became more aware of how others might react to your feelings than how those feelings actually felt inside your body. Over time, this can create a strange disconnect where you're emotionally articulate but still feel unseen. People who learned to hide their needs often develop an exceptional ability to read others. You notice tone shifts, facial expressions, pauses, and subtle changes in energy. This sensitivity didn't come from curiosity, it came from necessity. When your needs weren't consistently welcomed, you had to anticipate moods to stay safe. You learned when to speak and when to stay quiet, when to adjust yourself to maintain harmony. This skill can look like empathy, and often it is, but it can also mean that your attention habitually flows outward, leaving very little space for your own internal signals to be heard. There's also a tendency toward minimizing your own pain. You might say, "It's not that bad," or "Others have it worse." You learned to downplay discomfort because acknowledging it didn't lead to relief. It led to dismissal, conflict, or emotional distance. So your system adapted by reducing the perceived importance of your own experience. This doesn't mean you don't feel deeply. It means you learned to invalidate yourself before anyone else could. And that habit can become so automatic that you don't even realize you're doing it. Another pattern is difficulty receiving care, even when it's offered freely. Compliments make you uncomfortable. Support feels unfamiliar. When someone shows up for you, a part of you waits for the other shoe to drop. This isn't because you don't deserve care. It's because your nervous system learned that care was inconsistent, conditional, or came with strings attached. So receiving without earning feels unsafe. You may feel more comfortable being the one who gives, supports, and listens because that role feels predictable. Being on the receiving end requires trust that hasn't always been rewarded. There's often a deep fear of being a burden, not just logically, but emotionally. You worry that your needs will exhaust others or push them away. This fear didn't come from nowhere. It came from moments when your needs were met with irritation, silence, or withdrawal. Even if no one ever said the words, you felt the message. So you internalize the idea that closeness requires self-containment, that love is something you preserve by asking for less. Over time, hiding your needs can create a sense of loneliness that's hard to explain. You might have relationships, you might be liked, respected, even relied upon, but there's a part of you that feels unseen because the most vulnerable parts rarely make it into the room. You show up as capable, calm, understanding, but the version of you that struggles, longs, or needs reassurance often stays private. Not because you want to be alone, but because being fully seen once felt too costly. It's important to understand that these patterns are not flaws. They are intelligent adaptations. They helped you survive emotionally in an environment where your needs were not met with care. Your nervous system did exactly what it was designed to do. It learned from experience and adjusted accordingly. The problem isn't that you adapted. The problem is that the environment changed, but the patterns stayed. As an adult, you may now be in spaces where your needs would be met with care, but your body doesn't know that yet. It still reacts based on old data. So even when you logically understand that it's okay to ask, something in you hesitates. That hesitation isn't weakness, it's memory. Awareness is the beginning of change, but not in a forceful way. You don't need to suddenly become someone who asks for everything or shares all the time. Healing here isn't about swinging to the opposite extreme. It's about gently noticing when you're silencing yourself out of habit rather than choice. It's about learning to check in with your body and ask what you actually need, even if you don't act on it right away. Sometimes the most radical step is simply naming your needs internally, without judgment. Letting yourself acknowledge discomfort without minimizing it. Allowing the possibility that needing support doesn't make you difficult or demanding, it makes you human. You don't have to prove your worth through self-erasure. Learning to reveal your needs is not about becoming dependent, it's about becoming integrated. It's about allowing all parts of you to exist, not just the ones that feel easy for others to handle. This process takes time, and it often feels uncomfortable at first. That discomfort doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you're doing something new. If you recognize yourself in these patterns, there's nothing broken about you. You didn't learn to hide your needs because you were too sensitive. You learned because you were perceptive, adaptive, and trying to stay connected in the only way you knew how. That intelligence is still with you. It can now be used to build relationships that don't require you to disappear. You are allowed to take up space. You are allowed to want things. You are allowed to be supported without earning it. And you're allowed to move toward that truth at your own pace. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing to Psychefold for deeper explorations into the quiet patterns that shape our inner lives. There's nothing wrong with you.